The first thing I heard wasn't my wife's voice. It was laughter. Loud, sloppy, wine-soaked laughter pouring through my phone speaker like I'd accidentally dialed into a comedy club instead of my own marriage. For half a second, I thought I'd misheard. Then I realized something was very wrong, because my wife, Lauren, wasn't talking to me. She was performing at me. Before I tell you what she said next, and trust me, it changed everything, do me a quick favor. If stories about real life, hard lessons, and quiet comebacks resonate with you, hit subscribe, tap like, and leave a comment. It helps the channel more than you know. Now let me take you back to the moment my life split cleanly in two. I was at my desk finishing up work emails, the house quiet, when my phone rang. Lauren was out at her usual monthly girls' night at our neighbor's place. Same routine every time. Too much wine, too much gossip, and me staying home because it's not your crowd. I answered casually, expecting a quick question or maybe a request to grab something from the store. Instead, her voice boomed through the phone, exaggerated and theatrical. "Okay, ladies, quiet down," she said, drawing it out. "I'm about to do something I should have done a long time ago." That's when it hit me. I was on speaker. The laughter faded into expectant silence, like an audience leaning forward in their seats. I could almost picture it. Wine glasses paused midair, smirks forming, everyone waiting for the punchline. "Hey," I said carefully. "Lauren, what's going on?" She ignored my tone completely. "Honey," she said sweetly, mockingly sweet. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I've made a decision." There was a dramatic pause. Then she dropped it. "We're done forever. This marriage is over." Gasps exploded on the other end. Someone actually said, "Oh my God." Another whispered, "Is she serious?" I didn't say a word, not because I was shocked, though I was, but because something inside me went very still, very clear. 7 years. That's how long we'd been married. 7 years of slowly becoming the punchline in her stories. The boring husband. The guy who never does anything right. The man she loved to complain about when she wanted attention. Normally, I'd defend myself later, privately, calmly. I'd tell myself it wasn't worth a fight. But this wasn't a joke gone too far. This was public humiliation served up for applause. I knew exactly what she expected next. Panic, pleading, me asking what I'd done wrong so the room could dissect my flaws like entertainment. Instead, I took a breath. "Understood," I said evenly. "Take care." And I hung up. The silence in my home was absolute. No music, no voices, just the faint hum of my computer fan. I placed my phone face down on the desk and stared at my email inbox like nothing had happened. But something had happened. For the first time in years, I didn't feel confused. I felt focused. There's a strange kind of clarity that comes when someone finally shows you who they really are, without filters or excuses. Lauren had just done that. On speaker, with witnesses, without hesitation. So I did what I always do when things get serious. I got methodical. I opened my laptop and logged into my banking apps. We kept separate accounts, but she had a card linked to mine, for shopping, dinners, nights out. Her mother, Diane, had access too, just in case. Within minutes, both cards were canceled. I changed passwords, updated security questions, called the bank and locked down my account so no new users could be added. My phone buzzed once, then again, then non-stop. I didn't look. Next came the streaming services, Netflix, Spotify, Amazon, passwords changed, profiles removed. The premium cable package she insisted we needed, downgraded. If she wanted luxury, she could fund it herself. By the time I shut the laptop, it was close to midnight. My phone was vibrating like it might burn through the desk. I finally picked it up, glanced at the screen, and set it back down without reading a single message. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because I was happy, not because it didn't hurt, but because for the first time, I wasn't pretending anymore. I woke up before my alarm, the kind of waking that feels deliberate, like my mind had already decided sleep was finished with me. The house was still quiet, wrapped in that gray early morning light that makes everything feel suspended. For a moment, I wondered if the night before had been a dream. Then my phone vibrated again on the nightstand, sharp and insistent, and reality snapped back into place. 17 missed calls, dozens of messages. I didn't open a single one. I made coffee slowly, deliberately. Every movement felt grounded, controlled. No shaking hands, no racing thoughts. Just a strange calm that I hadn't felt in years. I sat at the kitchen table, mug warming my palms, and stared out the window as the sun started to rise. 7 years of marriage had ended the night before, and yet the world kept going. Birds still chirped, cars still passed, nothing had collapsed. That realization alone felt powerful. The phone rang again. This time I recognized the number immediately. Diane. My mother-in-law rarely called me directly. When she did, it was usually polite, clipped, and transactional. This call was none of those things. "What did you do?" she demanded the moment I answered. "Good morning," I replied calmly. "My card was declined," she snapped. "I was at Target. The cashier had to void everything. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" I took a slow sip of coffee. "Yes, I imagine I do." There was frantic whispering on her end of the line, voices overlapping. Lauren's voice was unmistakable, high, agitated, desperate. Diane came, back sharper than before. "She says something happened last night, something stupid. You don't just punish family over a misunderstanding." "I'm not punishing anyone," I said. "I'm responding to a decision that was announced publicly." Another pause, longer this time. "She didn't mean it like that," Diane said. "It was just girl talk." "Girl talk doesn't usually involve declaring a marriage over forever," I replied, on speaker, in front of witnesses. The line went quiet again. When she spoke, her tone had shifted, less aggressive, more calculating. "You can't just shut people out," she said. "This affects more than you." "I was told very clearly that I'm no longer part of the picture," I said. "I'm respecting that." I ended the call before she could respond and blocked the number. I didn't feel guilty. I felt resolved. By late morning, the messages had multiplied. Unknown numbers, friends, people I hadn't spoken to in months. I ignored them all. I wasn't interested in controlling the narrative or defending myself. Anyone who mattered would eventually hear the truth. Anyone who didn't wasn't my concern. Around noon, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I didn't need to look to know who it was, but I did anyway. Lauren stepped out slowly, like she wasn't sure the ground would hold her. Same clothes as the night before. Hair pulled back hastily. Sunglasses too big for her face, even though the sky was overcast. She tried her key. Once, twice. She stared at the door like it had betrayed her, then knocked, soft at first, then harder. "I know you're in there," she called. I waited a beat, then opened the door just enough to face her. I didn't invite her inside. "What is wrong with you?" she demanded, pulling off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red, makeup smudged. "You humiliated me." I almost laughed, but stopped myself. "You humiliated yourself," I said. "I just believed you." "It wasn't serious," she snapped. "Everyone was talking. I got caught up." "So our marriage is a punchline now?" I asked quietly. She tried to step past me into the house. I shifted, blocking the doorway. "You don't get to come back like nothing happened," I said. "Not after last night." "This is my home too," she shot back. "My life is here." "You made a different choice," I replied. "Publicly." Her voice cracked then, tears forming fast, too fast. "I didn't think you'd actually take it this far." I met her gaze evenly. "That's the problem. You didn't think." She stood there, stunned, as if the script had changed without warning. For years she'd controlled the tone, the emotion, the outcome. Now, none of it was working. "I just need time," she said softly. "We can talk." "Talking didn't seem important last night," I said. I closed the door gently but firmly, locking it behind me. Through the window, I watched her stand there, pacing, wiping her face, pulling out her phone again and again. Eventually, she walked back to her car and drove away. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, and sat down at my desk. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. The house felt different after she left. Not emptier, quieter in a way that felt intentional, like the silence wasn't an absence anymore, but a boundary. I sat at my desk for a long time without turning the computer on, just listening to the ticking clock on the wall. Every tick felt like a small confirmation that time was moving forward whether I chased it or not. My phone buzzed again. A blocked number this time. I didn't answer. Instead, I put on a jacket and stepped outside. The air was crisp, the kind that clears your head without asking permission. I drove without music, without destination at first, letting the road decide. Eventually, I found myself in a familiar parking lot, the kind of place you don't plan to visit, but your body remembers before your mind does. The law office sat between a dentist and a dry cleaner. Neutral, forgettable, professional. I sat in my car for a full minute before getting out, hands resting on the steering wheel, breathing evenly. Walking through that door didn't feel dramatic. It felt necessary. The attorney, Mark, was calm in that practiced way people get after years of dealing with other people's chaos. He listened without interrupting while I laid out what had happened, sticking to facts, not feelings. Speakerphone, public declaration, witnesses, separate finances, no kids, house in my name. When I finished, he leaned back slightly and nodded. "So she announced the end of the marriage publicly," he said, "and you accepted that statement as genuine." "Yes," I said, "exactly as it was said." He didn't smile, but there was something approving in his expression. That clarity matters. We talked logistics, not outcomes, paperwork, timelines, next steps. He asked questions that felt strangely grounding, things with concrete answers. When I stood to leave, I felt lighter, like I'd set something heavy down without realizing how long I'd been carrying it. When I got home, her car was parked crooked in the driveway. Lauren was waiting near my garage, dressed carefully this time, hair done, makeup flawless, a look she used to reserve for dinners with people she wanted to impress. She straightened when she saw me, her expression shifting into something rehearsed. "We need to talk," she said, stepping closer. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied. Her eyes widened slightly. "You're really doing this." "You already did," I said. She laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Over one night?" "Over one choice," I corrected. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. "I was drinking," she said quickly. Everyone was being dramatic. "You know, how group energy gets." "So you only disrespect me when there's an audience," I said. "That's supposed to help?" Her face tightened. "You're twisting this." "I'm taking it at face value." Her voice rose then, frustration breaking through the polish. "You can't just erase me from your life." "I didn't," I said calmly. "You announced your exit." She stared at me like I'd slapped her, not because I was wrong, but because I wasn't playing along. For years, arguments with Lauren followed a pattern. Emotion escalated, tears appeared, I backed down. This time the pattern had nowhere to land. "I won't sign anything," she said suddenly. "You can't force this." "I don't need to," I replied. "I just need to document it." That stopped her cold. "You already talked to someone," she said. "Yes." Her confidence cracked, just a little. "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious." She stood there for a long moment, then turned and walked back to her car without another word. I watched her drive away, not with triumph, but with certainty. That evening, I went to the grocery store, a normal errand, something I hadn't done alone in years without commentary or critique. The cashier glanced at me, hesitated, then offered a sympathetic smile. "Rough week?" he asked casually. "Busy," I said. He nodded like he understood more than I'd said. In a small town, news travels faster than truth, but truth has a way of catching up. Later at home, I cooked dinner for one, simple, quiet. I ate at the table instead of the couch, noticing things I hadn't in years, the sound of my fork, the way the light shifted as the sun went down. My phone stayed face down the entire time. That night, as I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I realized something that surprised me. I wasn't bracing for what came next. I was ready for it. By the end of the week, the silence around me had grown louder than any argument we'd ever had. Not the uncomfortable kind, the kind that presses in on you, but the kind that clears space. The house had settled into a rhythm that didn't revolve around moods or performances. I woke up when I wanted, ate when I was hungry, left the television off without anyone complaining about the quiet. Lauren, on the other hand, was very much not quiet. She tried new numbers after I blocked the old ones, friends' phones, co-workers I barely recognized. Once, even a private number that rang twice before stopping, like someone had lost their nerve. I didn't respond to any of it, not out of cruelty, but out of finality. I'd said everything I needed to say already. On Thursday afternoon, I ran into Kevin, my brother-in-law, outside the hardware store. He looked uncomfortable the moment he saw me, shifting his weight like he wasn't sure which side of the sidewalk he belonged on. "Man," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "what the hell happened?" I kept my answer short. "Lauren ended the marriage publicly. I accepted it." He frowned. "She says you're blowing things out of proportion." "She said we were done forever," I replied. "Those were her words." Kevin was quiet for a long moment. Then he exhaled slowly. "Yeah, that's not how she explained it." I figured. That was all I said. I didn't need to convince him. The truth had weight all on its own. When he nodded and walked away, I knew the story was already changing shape. Less dramatic, more uncomfortable. That evening, Diane called again from another number. I answered this time, mostly out of curiosity. "She's been staying with me," she said, sounding tired. "She's not doing well." "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied honestly. "She says you turned everyone against her." "I haven't spoken to anyone," I said. "I just didn't lie." There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "She made a mistake. She made a choice," I corrected gently. Diane sighed. "What do you want from her?" "Nothing," I said. "I want peace." The call ended shortly after that. No yelling, no threats, just resignation. The social ripple effects became impossible to ignore after that. Invitations I hadn't received in years started appearing again. A message from Tom, an old friend I used to golf with before Lauren decided she hated golf weekends. Another from Ray, a coworker who casually suggested grabbing a beer after work. It was subtle but noticeable, like doors reopening one by one. I went to the gym for the first time in years that Saturday. No schedule, no guilt, no commentary about how long I'd be gone. Just me, moving my body, reminding myself what it felt like to take up space without apology. The soreness the next day felt earned. The following Sunday, I went to our usual brunch spot downtown. I didn't think about Lauren when I walked in, until I saw her across the room. She had clearly planned this, hair styled, outfit chosen carefully, a smile already forming as she stood and walked toward me. The room was full of familiar faces, the after-church crowd thick and attentive. "Well," she said brightly, just loud enough. "What a surprise." I gestured to the empty chair across from me. "Go ahead." She sat, leaning forward slightly, voice soft but deliberate. "I've had a lot of time to think." I let her talk. She spoke about reflection, about growth, about how much she missed me. Her voice wavered at the right moments, tears threatening but not quite falling yet. People nearby were definitely listening. This wasn't a conversation. It was a scene. When she finally paused, waiting for me to respond, I looked at her calmly. "You're asking to reconcile with the man you publicly divorced," I said evenly. Her smile faltered. "You ended our marriage for an audience," I continued. "Now you're trying to restart it the same way." "This doesn't have to be like this," she whispered. "It already is," I replied. The room had gone noticeably quieter, not silent, but attentive. "I didn't end anything," I said. "You did. I just believed you." Her face flushed as she realized something crucial. No one was coming to her rescue. No sympathetic murmurs, no social pressure shifting in her favor. Just people watching a truth they hadn't heard before settle into place. She stood abruptly, chair scraping loudly. "You're cruel," she hissed under her breath. I stayed seated. "I'm consistent," she stormed out, eyes blazing. I finished my coffee, paid my bill, and left through the front door, nodding politely to a couple I knew on the way out. In the parking lot, I heard her yelling behind me. Accusations, anger, words meant to hurt. I didn't turn around. That night, as I sat on my couch in a house that finally felt like mine, I realized something important. This wasn't about winning. It was about being done. 3 months later, I was sitting in Mark's office again, signing the last of the paperwork. The room smelled faintly of coffee and old books, the kind of place where big decisions get reduced to ink and initials. My hand didn't shake once. When I signed the final page, Mark gathered the documents into a neat stack and nodded. "That's it," he said. "Clean separation. No shared debts, no alimony, no joint assets left to untangle. The house stayed mine. The cars stayed mine." Lauren walked away with her personal belongings and whatever was left in her individual account. Her attorney, according to Mark, had advised her not to fight it, not because she suddenly agreed with me, but because reality had finally cornered her. I walked out of that office lighter than I'd felt in years. Life didn't explode into fireworks after that. It got quieter, better. Mornings became something I looked forward to instead of endured. I went back to the gym regularly, not chasing youth, just reclaiming myself. I dropped weight without trying too hard, slept through the night without tension buzzing under my skin, ate what I wanted, when I wanted, without commentary or criticism. Word had fully settled around town by then. Not the dramatic version, the accurate one. People didn't ask many questions anymore. They just nodded, clapped me on the shoulder, told me I'd handled things with dignity. Even the bank teller mentioned it once, smiling as she slid a receipt across the counter. "It's nice to see someone set boundaries," she said quietly. Lauren's life took a different turn. Without access to my income, she had to find full-time work. One job turned into two. The studio apartment she moved into was on the far side of town, nowhere near the lifestyle she used to brag about. Diane eventually stopped covering her expenses. Family patience runs thin when accountability never shows up. The social fallout lingered longest. The girls' night group that once laughed the loudest quietly stopped inviting her. People don't trust someone who turns private relationships into public entertainment. Trust doesn't vanish overnight, but it doesn't come back easily either. I saw Lauren a few times around town, at a gas station, at the mall, always from a distance. She looked tired, not older, just worn down by a life that no longer bent to her expectations. Once, our eyes met briefly. I nodded politely. She looked away first. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt closure. 6 months after everything began, I ran into Sarah, one of her former friends, at a coffee shop downtown. She hesitated before approaching, like she wasn't sure she was welcome. "I heard everything finally settled," she said. "It did," I replied. She nodded. "For what it's worth, a lot of us felt awful about that night. We should have stopped her." "I appreciate that," I said honestly. "But it's done." She studied me for a moment, then smiled. "You look good. Peace suits you." It did. The house felt like a sanctuary now. No emotional landmines, no manufactured drama. Just quiet evenings, familiar music, and the freedom to exist without being evaluated. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with, men who admitted they'd stopped inviting me places because it was always complicated before. Now, it wasn't. Financially, life improved fast. Without constant spending disguised as self-care, money stayed where it belonged. I started planning a trip, not to escape, but to explore, something I hadn't done in years. One evening, driving home as the sun dipped low, I thought about that night again, the laughter, the speakerphone, the words that ended everything. At the time, it felt like humiliation. In hindsight, it was clarity. She didn't free me by leaving. She freed me by showing me who she was when she thought she had an audience. When someone shows you they don't respect you, believe them the first time. Don't negotiate your dignity. Don't wait for a better explanation. Take them at their word. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger or victory or public redemption. Sometimes it's peace. If this story resonated with you, do me a favor. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need to hear them. I'll see you in the next one.